A timer I don't have because my phone is there.
Want me to set my watch? Yeah.
I'd prefer to time, but
Yeah.
I could,
I
if
can
I could
set
borrow
it.
something, that'd be
Do
great.
you want it to be going backwards or forwards?
Forwards, unless that means the screen's going to go off.
No, I just set it so the screen never goes off.
Oh,
It's on
there you go.
stopwatch.
No, that's
If it
excellent.
starts talking about no internet connection, I don't know what to tell you.
You're on your own.
You're on your
Yeah.
own with that one.
Okay. I'm going to come forward here. Okay, nice to be with you all speaking, and after hearing so much interesting reflection. A lot, obviously, could be spoken about with nature practice, and I'll tell a little of my own story and then focus on vulnerability, protection, and freedom. And when I first fell in love with nature, I was probably 15. Backyard, lots of trees, lots of challenge in middle school and high school. Just like, give me a break from trying to negotiate being better, worse, fitting right. So then nature was just, didn't offer me any of that criticism or any of that judgment, right? I look at the trees and they're such great examples of how I want to be. Strong and upright. And at first I would just pick like the most beautiful things. And then I started to notice that, of course, well, there was a tree that wasn't doing so well. And there was a tree that was dead. And there was a log with another tree growing out of it. And I started to see, oh, there's a little more going on here, right? And one of the themes that I couldn't express at the time that was so important to me, the reason I could be myself in nature, was this concept of vulnerability. That one of the things I was seeing is that these trees, let's just say, or these creatures in nature, I could really see their vulnerability. And a tree is a great example because I can go up to it and I can cut it down. I can kill it really easily, and sometimes I do. I work in agriculture and forestry, and it's just that, you know, the story of the Shel Silverstein Giving Tree book, right? Like, this sense of, I don't know if it's generosity, but certainly it's vulnerability, right? That this tree has. Not being able to move or run away. And of course, lots of the natural world is vulnerable in this way and has succumbed to our interest in using those resources in one way or another. So this vulnerability piece has been a real great teacher for me in nature as my practice has continued. And I think it took years and years to go by to realize the ways in which I tried to cover over my own vulnerability. In fact, that was part of the reason in some ways I went to nature. Because I was so vulnerable in high school, so vulnerable to other people, what they think of me. Right? I mean, it's not too much different today. Especially when you're in leadership roles. It's like, oh my God. Okay, like, and so I noticed my own protection, right? Layers and layers of protection that I had built without knowing it, and for good reason at different times. All the way from very, very young, before I could remember, to all the way to strategies to get to where I wanted to go in the world, to get to where I thought I should be in the world, the right job, the right relationship, the right things. And so Yeah, it's real for me right now. This sort of thing. What is a healthy sense of protection for myself and for the natural world, right? Am I protecting from a place of fear? Certainly has its effectiveness. Am I managing my environment so much that I limit the amount of pain I feel? Yeah, I am doing that to a degree. It's skillful sometimes. But then eventually, this sense of protection has started to feel like it's strangling me. Like a vine climbing up a tree. There's a lot of English ivy where I live. Strangling trees slowly, right? Sometimes it feels like that. So, what is sort of like, it's the only way I know, though, to protect myself, is to act from fear, from control, from managing my experience, my surroundings, right? So I'm holding that question, right? And I think this practice and I think this presence of nature is particularly insightful for me in this inquiry, because it seems to be sourcing itself not only from its physical form, not only from its circumstances or conditions. There seems to be some somewhat ineffable quality. And I think that's also something I saw when I was young. I mean, why do I feel so safe out here? There's just something in the air. These words, of course, they're not going to quite reach it, but the presence is nice. We talk about it here, so I talk about it. Right? So presence. So what is the protection of presence? I wonder. And does that, or can that allow us to be fully vulnerable without fear? And if it can, doesn't that put us in a place where we're sort of unstoppable? Right? I mean, from the mind of an activist, from the mind of anyone putting themselves or finding themselves in dangerous or challenging situations, but yet wanting to live a full life, yet wanting to feel a fully embodied. Vulnerability is so important, but how do we be vulnerable without being destroyed? And so I think there's some key here with this concept of presence. It's sort of the third concept of the talk, is freedom. Is there a way we can source our protection not from separation, not from stepping back, not from creating boundaries, but yet from entering into connection? And not just entering, but keep walking deeper and deeper into connection, which has come up in some of the earlier talks. Like, what comes up when you enter connection? Well, a lot. Grief, maybe. Pain, maybe. Maybe metta and love as well. But to keep walking farther into this sense of connection, to see if there might be protection. Somehow just inside, like completely within this sense of connection in our lives. So I'm curious about that. I'm curious what your relationship is between vulnerability and protection, and the limitations of your strategies to protect yourself, and what else might work in a way that's more holistically supportive of yourself and the environment. So I'm just curious to take a few comments or questions, and then we can have some feedback.
I have a comment that totally resonates with me, and now that I've shared kind of my early life, mean, I've done a lot of therapy and I kind of understand why, but I've totally closed myself off to be invulnerable, in ways that make me lose my vulnerability. And I go through my life with this veneer of being strong and together, and take on a lot of leadership roles and have done a lot of stuff. But down inside, as I get older, I just get more and more cut off, and that sense of being strangled is so present for me. And I don't really know how this ties in to nature, but my strategy right now is to try to see what it's like to be vulnerable and to share more, to step outside of what I would normally let other people see and say, this is me, I'm really screwed up, I'm really not perfect, I really have all these problems and baggage. And, so I think that's, for me anyway, that's the first step, is just, I'm so far down that road that it's like, what do you have to lose? I can't keep on going with this wall to protect myself. I have to get out of it. And that's been, I've revealed some things to some really important people in the last couple of weeks that were really difficult. But it's like stepping off a diving board, it's like just let go. And that's where, and then there's freedom around that, even if there's a little bit of a cost.
Yeah, what do you have to lose? I like that. It's a powerful place to be in. It's a really vulnerable and actionable place. A place where you can move from. Yeah, I like that. Thanks.
So what resonated for me, I really liked when you talked about walking. It's just walking into the presence. I mean, I think there's a poem about that. The one where the voices keep calling you, but you keep walking to save the only life you can save.
Yeah, Mary Oliver.
Yeah, I love that poem.
Yeah, that's
so
a good
when
one.
You talked about the walking into, that I'm taking steps into the unknown. And that's kind of how I'm living my life right now, because I know I have limited time, and so just taking all the risks I can and scaring myself.
Yeah, so sort of similar theme, seeing you have limited time, not as much to lose anymore.
Yeah.
Maybe not worth it to protect as much in the same way.
I have a comment. It made me think about my backpacking and how, what a great experience it is, exposing yourself to, in some cases, adverse conditions. And, I had this one particular trip where I took my sister with me, and my sister thinks she likes backpacking, but really she doesn't. So we go on these trips, and it's really like torture for her, because anytime anything goes wrong, and in this case, it went wrong. It wasn't wrong. It was just like these high winds came up, right? And it's like the whole night, the tent is just like this, And I find that there's so much freedom in that vulnerability, because once you put yourself in it and make yourself vulnerable to it, you realize, oh, now I can just be outside. Now I can just be in nature, because I know that, things are going to happen, but it's going to be okay. And that's part of the experience. And I remember my partner at the time, he was just like, does she just think it's all like, I don't know, perfect and fun? You know what I mean? But like, we were laughing like the whole night. It was so funny. Like, the tent wall like this, and it was just like, this is just the way it is. It's fun. But it is also like a willingness to expose yourself.
Right. Yeah, so fun came out of the vulnerability. Yeah, I like that. That's unexpected, perhaps, for most of us.
It was not fun for her.
It wasn't fun for her. It was fun for you. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought she was laughing on
No, she was not.
Oh.
She was angry.
I thought she was, though.
No, she.
She's
was
angry you were
really
laughing.
disappointed, which was really too bad.
That is too bad. Because I
Yeah.
think about experiences of taking kids camping and how those are the ones they remember, and they love, like the time it rained the whole time. And then
Well, that's with you
woke
though,
up.
because if you were like, oh, I can't believe it rained the whole time. I
Yeah.
told you we shouldn't go this weekend. They pick that up.
Yeah. Yeah. But I was just thinking, like, each of those moments that you have, like you sharing with your friends or whatever, that you take a little vulnerable step and everything doesn't fall apart. You know, it makes it easier to take that next step, and that and being able to reflect on that, and that's for me how I move into it.
Right. Yeah. Building trust,
Yeah.
faith.
And the word that comes to mind, because I think of like Brene Brown and all her research about vulnerability came out of the research on shame.
Yeah.
Shame is the biggest protector, I think. It's so hard.
Yeah.
But I love thinking of you in middle school going out into the woods, and because it's such a hard time.
It is a hard time. Yeah. So we're at 15 minutes, so maybe 3 minutes or so for feedback on the talk, how it was.
I loved the pauses, the spoken, you know, I could just see you as the Dharma teacher. Just very well done and thoughtful, personal, and yet weaving it into what might be relevant for me. So,
Yeah, you have really amazing speaking style, and I really felt you looking at us, like you, and you paused. Like your use of the space was really powerful. I was right there with you the whole time. I love the way you, and I love the way you started with those 3 words and wove that throughout. That was a good, simple structure.
It was really clear going in. I like the way you took you had stories, but it wasn't just here's the stories. It was really woven together really nicely.
And the topic of vulnerability, and you're being so vulnerable. Like you sharing so from your vulnerable heart was really powerful. Like instead of just talking about it.
You had a really good, too, when you started to ask us about questions, you continued in the role of the facilitator really well. Like someone, Yana would say something, and then you had a good follow-up, so that I had the sense of the student, like, wow, he's really like listening to what people are saying. Like you were very, very sincere about the comments.
Yeah, and I like the mention also of when you were talking about trees and vulnerability, that you yourself also sometimes, you know, take trees out. You can kind of see from my orientation, like it's important to acknowledge that relationship also, and not just, you know, kind of gloss it over, but say, hey, this is part of the way we are with each other too, and we can recognize that, you know, that's a living reality for us, not just as the vulnerable one, but as the one who potentially kind of acts on vulnerability.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was also the little S from the surprise S for me.
Oh, there we
Definitely.
And I also kill trees.
Every day.
Just revealed he's a murderer during this time.
I'm leaving, you tree killer. Remember when Justin did the talk about killing trees?